Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Friday Focus on Friday, the 20th of February. Where's the year going already? At 20th of February, we're at half term. Thank you if you're watching or listening at home. I hope you've had a great week, or if you're on a 2-week half term, wherever that's the middle or the end of it, then good. It's good time to take time and just rest and reflect on the year passing. We're halfway through the academic year here in the UK. So Friday Focus back live this morning. Thank you for being here. If you are on live on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Substack, or on Spotify, please do comment and subscribe. Press the like button, share, subscribe to the channel, because it helps us build the conversation that we're having. So please get involved in the conversation. Put something in the chat and talk to us about what we're talking about today. Now, today, my guests are Paul and Jo Stone from the Discovery Trust. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we have an interesting conversation ahead around technology, EdTech, and pedagogical technology, PedTech, EdTech and PedTech. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Jo and Paul, nice to have you here this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us. Hi, my name's Paul Stone. I'm the CEO of Discovery Schools Trust, which is a mat in Leicestershire.
And my name's Jo Stone, and I am the PedTech lead for Discovery Schools Trust, which is quite a different role, quite unique, but I'll explain that probably more, Chris, as we go through this session this morning.
Absolutely, and that's really what I want to hear. There's so much being talked about EdTech. And particularly, internationally, there are people that are buying British EdTech around the world, and it's growing massively. But we really need to get into this understanding, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say on it. So, your journeys to this point, Paul, CEO of a trust. What was your journey to that point?
Well, when I was a founding head teacher of Kidworth Primary School, and we were always very much a digital at school. We did lots of filmmaking, we did lots of work back in 2012, and then it just progressed as more schools joined. Our journey, probably officially in this journey, would start, I would say, 2017, when we started to really look at how we could use tech to personalise learning and how we could use it to adapt our teaching strategies. So we started then. And we went down to visit a few schools that were probably further ahead than us, and we looked at what Microsoft were doing, what Google were doing, and then we chose a particular path going forward.
Yeah. And tell us a bit about the size of the trust. I mean, the trust means all sorts of different things, isn't it? There are some that are 2 or 3 or 1 school, and some that are larger. Tell us a bit about Discovery Schools Trust.
So currently we are 20 schools. We've got 15 primary schools. We've got 4 all through special schools of different types, and we've got 1 secondary school, and they're all spread out across Leicestershire, Leicester City as a local authority. And we've got 2 schools in a small county, Rutland, and so we're kind of like quite geographically close together, probably about 50 minutes journey from any one school at any one time. So it's quite a tight network. So one of the advantages that we had was being so local to try and collectively move together going forward.
I mean, that does make a difference, doesn't it? I mean, our work in Smart Curriculum, we work with trusts. I'm not going to name other trusts, but they're in the north of England and they're in the south coast, and that collaboration is tough in that environment. So being close together has made a difference, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has a real difference, particularly when we try to bring in the infrastructure, because part of the journey was realizing early days that we needed the infrastructure right first. So we were able to build our own IT tech team that serves ourselves. We moved away from having third-party providers in our schools, so we could really control what we wanted to do, and the infrastructure, the network structure, and then we could roll that out across our schools. So that really allowed us then to really think about where our techs are going to go, how we fund that across our group of schools as a MAT, what collectively we do together. that really helps, because in the early days we found we saved quite a lot of money by not going to third-party providers. We were all going out to different people who were charging schools individually and not as a collectively as a MAT. I was really lucky that my technician was really talented from our founding school, Nathan Thirlby, and he helped us build that service across schools. So and in the early days, we really took our time making sure that the wireless network was right, the switches were right, all of those things that stopped the tech being used. Because if the tech wasn't being used, we were really nervous that a teacher would lose faith in it straight away, because as soon as you try to use it and it doesn't work, it's always mission critical, so it needed to work going forward. So then as that journey went and it expanded, we realized that we needed somebody centrally. I was doing a lot with Nathan, and the two of us have got, I mean, I'm obviously a CEO role. I couldn't carry on being that involved. So we needed the PedTech leader post, which Joe took on. And I forget what date you started, Joe.
It was back in 2019, and I did the role for 2 years. And then, interestingly, I think as a MAT, we thought, we're doing this, it's okay, we've got this sorted, you know, this is working. Pedagogy, it's embedded, and we kind of had a bit, I think there was a bit of a rejuggle, and I decided to become a head teacher at that point. And then I was head teacher for 2 years, and then this post came up again, because I think the trust felt that there was obviously still a need to drive it. You actually really need this role to make sure you maintain it and it doesn't start to dip, because you absolutely need to know what's coming, what trends are out there, as well as what's going on in your own schools and what's happening, you know, nationally as well as internationally. So then I think I took the role back on in 2022 and 2023, and then
I mean, the key thing that I realized that I hadn't factored in was many of our schools became Microsoft Showcase schools, and we used that as a framework to, not as you know, as the final point, but just as a structure to know where we got to. So we know we've got consistency, we've got the right structures, we've got the right pedagogy, we've got the right teaching structures and frameworks in place. So when our school started to get Showcase status, I felt at the time, right, well, I'd got a benchmark and we could move away. So Joe went back into headship, but then I found we started to go backwards, because what I hadn't factored in was that many of the staff, staff change, people new coming in, they didn't have the training, and we couldn't keep up with the amount of training of that change of going forward. And also, you know, the speed of technology. I mean, if you think back in 23, you're talking Chat GTP and all the other things that were just coming along, and then it exploded again. So we really invested back in that post. And I had a long conversation with Joe about giving up our headship, because I really needed her back in the trust, you know, central team, rather than being in schools. So that was a difficult decision personally for Joe, but I'm really glad we've done that. And because Joe's role is absolutely key in providing that one-to-one support as well. So when you've got somebody who's really tech phobic at the start and nervous, Joe's got a great ability to just work with that person, coach them and show them, you know, little steps, and then so that they get success, so they can move on further, as well as working with leaders to think about how you implement change. Because the change implementation is so important to get right, because you either move too fast or too slowly, and really planning that out and really keeping it the main thing is the most important. So you need someone to help a head coordinate that, because being a head or a school leader nowadays, you're spread so thinly, doing so many different tasks. You know, implementation of change is really key. So having Joe really support that for a head has made a tremendous difference.
I mean, there's so many questions that come to that out of that, just that piece that you've just talked through. Like, you know, so the journey, you know, in the middle of that, we can't ignore the fact that, you know, Joe, in your journey there, you know, the pandemic hit in 2020, but you were ahead of the curve. You know, so many schools have got into Teams and got into, you know, to Microsoft products, or gone into Google products as a result of having to do it. But you were ahead of the curve. You were doing something before that.
Yes, and we were lucky because we were also part of the EdTech demonstrator program as well. So we also supported at that time. We also supported schools within that time, which was really interesting at the same time. You know, to see what we were doing, but then also to enable others to take those steps to be able to, you know, be able to educate children online.
So, given the fact that you were ahead of it, what difference did the pandemic and the kind of ballooning of all these pieces of kit and apps and so on? I mean, I can think from my own journey working with some primary schools. Purple Mash and Facebook became something. That all of the things that suddenly became a communication tool in the classroom or from the classroom, they were the centre of people's attention. What did that do to you in terms of your journey? Because you were already in it, you were shaping things. What was happening for you?
I think it just turbocharged everything. It really helped us. Even the people who we were gently trying to bring on board suddenly became on board really quickly, and it really showed head teachers that we needed to invest in devices because they were so important. But it also really it drove home the point that it's not just tech. It is blended learning. Paper and pencils and traditional methods are just as important to learn as the tech model. I think it also took us through that journey where at the time we were doing EdTech, we were using EdTech to teach, but now we're using PedTech to teach, pedagogical teaching, where you're using the tech to change your teaching style. And I think that's the journey of, where we've gone from EdTech to PedTech, because EdTech was a replacement tool where you would use your device to replace things. And now we're really in adaptive teaching times, and personalized teaching way more than we did. But without the pandemic, we wouldn't have had that learning journey, and we wouldn't have had it such a quick, intense learning journey to pick up as we were going along.
Some people talk of change comes. You talked about change management, and we see the incremental change, but there are points at which you get that step change. So there are things that are growing, and then suddenly something happens. And would you say that the pandemic has kind of forced you into that step change? It kind of you described it as accelerating or pushing you forward. So it's really made a difference within the trust. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I think it did. It really accelerated. But also, I think what's also important for this journey is really making sure you've got a 3-year strategy or implementation plan around this, so you know where you're going and you've got your vision. And I think that's probably what we had in place as well. And we constantly refresh that and review that. So because again, it's a changing landscape, as we all know. So you've got to keep bringing it back, discussing it, seeing what's coming, and then go again. And not be afraid to stop things and take them out. If they're not working, you might take on a platform or an app and think it's the best thing, but actually over time when you review it's not doing what you thought it was going to, with either the teachers or the pupils in the classroom. So it's being brave enough to say stop, let's recharge.
I think that's a really good point, Joe, because one of the key things we learned was about an ecosystem. There were so many apps, so many different things, and we had to be really strict. We were going to be using Microsoft Teams. We're not going to be using Zoom. We're not going to be using Google Classmeet. And because that is impossible to train if you've got a mixed ecosystem, and it's impossible to mitigate the risks, the safety, all of those different things. So we had to be really quite draconian at the start. And that led to us forming a platform working group, where now in our trust we have a very tight ecosystem where we use a very small amount of apps. We found we save loads of money because some schools weren't using certain apps or platforms particularly well, because staff change over a period of time, and one staff might use it really well, and then the next year when that person moves into the year group, they use it less well, and it just degrades over time. So we saved a lot of money there. We looked at what free tools we've got in the Microsoft tenancy and what do we need. Do we really need all these other platforms when we can use what we've got? So we saved some money, but it also really focused our thoughts about what works well and what's the evidence for the impact of using that tool, and is it worth its money. So we've now got quite an advanced platform group that meets together, reviews all the data protection, the safety around that, but also when something new comes along, it goes to the platform group first. We test it, we trial it, test and learn it, and then we roll it out to everybody across the mat. And I think without the pandemic, we wouldn't have gone through those pain.
And that's true as well, because it's not just about the cost, it's about the pedagogy in the classroom. What is it doing in the classroom? How is it being utilised? How have the teachers planned that in? We have discussions about different apps and platforms. And again, I'll go in and review as well and talk to teachers about where it's making the biggest impact for them. And if it isn't, like you say, we remove it, or we have that discussion.
Yeah, or sometimes it's training, isn't it?
It is.
Sometimes it's just training for somebody to say, look, this platform gives you tremendous amount of data. Recently, Joe and I have been speaking about how teaching has got to change, be much more data-led teaching, in that you look at the data that information provides you and you can adapt your teaching for what needs to be done next. And they were the early days where we really found that. And sometimes it's just training for a teacher to say, look, this app it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to make everything better for you unless you use that data, because you are key. The key thing about the use of technology in the classroom is the teacher is more important than ever, because you are the controller of that. You use it to adapt your teaching. It's not a replacement, which a lot of people felt it's going to be. I strongly believe the teacher, even with the advent of AI, will always be there to be the relationship manager, the focus of the targets. Is the teacher is key to everything,
Yeah.
And that quality first teaching.
Yeah.
We've talked on the show about the AI, and people talk about artificial intelligence all the time, but the reality is it's augmented intelligence. It's augmenting our ability to do things. And if we change the language, we get a different value system. And I think, Paul, what you just said is so important, that it's not a replacement. It is simply there as a tool. And I'm really interested. I just come back to the kind of reality. You both said, so your tech group, that you're discussing the platforms and you're talking about effectiveness. What do you do? We can talk about EdTech and PedTech in a theoretical sense, but practically in a leadership term. So you've got this appreciation of what tools you have available, and you concentrate on them so they're used well. So what happens when a leader has got other ideas or brings in some fresh ideas to the piece? How does that happen? Because obviously a lot of technology has grown because mavericks have stepped aside and done something different.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it in a systematic sense, how does that work within your kind of the ecosystem that you've created? So where do ideas come from? Where does innovation keep going?
Well, they would submit a paper to that platform group. So there was a writing marking tool which was submitted about 18 months ago to say this could really change. Head teacher really wanted it, came to the platform group, we looked at it, we evaluated it, we trialed it in that school, we did a one school trial for a year, and then we looked at how could that get rolled out. And we're trying to be, we're not universities, but we're trying to apply some research, tools to this, impact tools, because we want to really make sure it works. It's not just a tool that somebody gets excited about. And then we look at how do we roll that out? How do we roll out the training? Who would lead that? Does Joe lead that? Does somebody else in the team lead that? How do we roll it out across staff meetings? How do we implement it across the trust so it's accessible?
And it's often running a pilot first, but also going back to that platform group as well. It's also about checking the GDPR and the privacy and the safeguarding element of that platform and app too. It's very easy to find as you said, I suppose the next shiny thing.
Yeah.
But you've really got to make sure that we're keeping children's data safe as well. So we make sure that we've done all those checks at that time too. So it really aligns the process for us now by putting that documentation in place.
It's also brought the cost down of buying license per people, because I go back to a supplier and say, look, we've trialed it, we've tested it, we've done this, we're not sure it's value for money compared to our other platform tools per pupil. We think it should be this. And generally they've gone with that, and we've reduced prices per person, quite significantly, because it's about impact. And I said, I'm not going to pay that price because I can't see the impact, of this. So I think it's put us back in the driving seat with some PedTech people who are very skilled at selling to people.
I think that's one of the key differences between EdTech and PedTech in the sense of what you're describing. It's not just selling a product to do whatever it might do. You're totally embedding it in the education process to do a job that needs to be important for children. Joe, can you tell us about? And I know you run. You talked about the sort of trialing and the year and the embedding it in before you rolled it out. Tell us a bit about the discovery days, or these your chance to sort of to see what's going on in the different schools, because you have a particular system for rolling things through.
Yes, yeah. So we've got we have they're called digital discovery days that we run, and we run study tours, so you can go around and see what's happening in the classrooms from EYFS through to year 6. They're in our primary schools at the moment, and then we also hold a live lesson during those days as well, so people can actually watch a live lesson. And what's nice about that is it's narrated by the head teacher or the blended learning champion, and they talk about what's happening in that lesson from that kind of EdTech viewpoint, why the teacher has chosen those particular platforms and those particular apps to do what they're doing in the lesson from a pedagogical viewpoint. So it's really powerful. But what we also do then is we video those lessons, those live lessons, so that we can use those for CPD as well. So we've got a bank of CPD videos that, again, for colleagues in the trust who can't come out to see those days, they get that, the benefit of watching that. And again, you can use it in staff meetings too, and have those discussions around what's going on in that lesson. But those days are also open to people outside of the trust as well as in the trust too. We use it as a CPD drive, but also we're very open to sharing this journey. This, I think, as Paul started off, this journey is about sharing what's going on out there, school to school, mat to mat. What we found, it was initially going out to view other schools, to talk to them what their journey's been so far, and it doesn't matter whether you're Microsoft, Google, or Apple. It's just about what is your digital journey, what have you decided to embed and embrace.
I think that's the key point, because some people can become too partisan about a particular platform. We've been to watch Apple schools and do Apple things, because we come back, it's about the pedagogy and the learning, not the tech that you're using. And Joe's point, these are completely free, open source. We give away whatever we've got as resources, because my view is taxpayers already paid for it, so it should be public view. But also it's paying it forward, because if it wasn't for Cornerstone Matt back in Devon in Broadclist, they really helped us transform our journey. So we've had people help us learn and move forward, and we're still learning. We're going to the Leo Academy in London soon, and I'm working with the CEO there and sharing learning. So if we want this journey to be accessible to schools, because starting the journey is really difficult, you just have to say, today we're going to start this, but realize it is a constant long journey going forward. We just want schools to be able to help doing that. So our digital showcase days, I thought schools would really push back at me and not want to do these, having lots of people come in, and they absolutely love them. It's a chance for them to celebrate what they're doing. They reaffirm what they're doing. They learn ideas from new people coming in, and the kids absolutely love having the visitors coming to their school to look at what they're doing. So it's been a really good thing. That's now become a natural thing that we've been doing now for at least 5-6 years. And it's something we will continue. And I'm hoping we're going to start that in our special schools soon. We're rolling out the next phase of our PedTech strategy to our all of our 4 special schools from September onwards. They're going to be getting devices, sort of one-to-one devices. And then our secondary school is a year after that. They'll have devices. We're just putting all the training, all the infrastructure in. And that's what Joe means about planning 3 years hence. It's not do it by September. It is a long journey, and you have to take your time and think about it carefully. But the showcase days really make a difference.
I was going to ask, so it sounds very teacher-led kind of activity. I was interested. You referred to it. I mean, you questions are unnecessary here because we're just talking through and you're bringing out the point. But how do the children themselves engage with it? Do they know that there's something different in their experience? The visitors are coming and they're looking at what they're doing. How do they interact with it? Joe, go.
They lead part of the day in most of these days. So they will have a section in the day where they come in, they talk to the visitors, they bring their laptops with them, they show them what they've been learning on Teams, on OneNote, they talk through the different apps that they use, Adobe Express, all those kind of different tools that for them is just an everyday tool. They just use it very naturally. For them, I think sometimes they look and think, why are we having to talk about this? It's just what we do every day. This is just natural for us. Yeah. They bring their workbooks as well, so they'll have their workbooks and they'll have their laptop. They'll talk people around, as I say, the different apps. There's the Minecraft education as well. They'll show them around the different things they've been creating in different worlds for different reasons. It might be that they've been learning about the Egyptians or the ancient Greeks. So there's real purpose behind using what they're showing the educators that come on these days. But I have to say as well, with these days as well, we do partnership with the EdTech companies, don't we, as well? They've really supported us with these days too. So we've got a particular partnership with ACER and Eduthing that have really helped us with these. But we also link with the EdTech hubs as well, nationally, and also the national PedTech partnership as well, where trusts come together and really see what's going on. We share, again, it's that sharing piece, and Dr. Fiona Aubrey-Smith has led that and brought us all together, which has been a great opportunity.
I think it's really, we've got a mission to really show what PedTech is and what it isn't. There's a real misconceptions out there. It's about screen time, it's about doom scrolling, it's about all of those other things. It really isn't. There's a wholly completely separate difference between active and passive screen time. There is a big movement against tech, which I think is really sad because it misunderstands how we're using tech. And some of the things they're talking about, if tech is used in that way as a replacement tool, it isn't great. It's got to change your pedagogy. So I think there's a real job for us to do as a sector to really explain to stakeholders what it is and what it isn't.
That's a really interesting point, Paul, and both of you. Just that, because you've got children so involved in it, and I'm thinking, certainly in our experience across the country, there are lots of schools that are talking about hiding devices and stopping access to things. And my reaction always is, well, when are we going to educate them in good use of these tools? When does that education begin? Because you can't wait until they leave school, and then that's it's got to be part of it. How do you respond when? I mean, obviously, because you're making devices available, and yes, we talked to Katie Potts from Haringey around what they're doing within early years, and screen time was a big issue for them. And yes, they monitor it, but it's very much, as you said, kept watching active time, not just passively scrolling through nonsense. Really using it. What's the kind of the stock answer when people ask these questions? In either of you,
I think we talk about active and passive. Joe's written a fantastic document for parents, which we can share if people access that, which really explains the difference between the two and what we're trying to do. We also invite them in, and we bring some of those people into our Microsoft Showcase Day, the Discovery Showcase Days, and we had one person who was particularly vocal about that. A parent and a governor came into the school and did a complete 360 on the day because she actually understood it. And the problem is, it's so different from the way we learned as children. It is difficult for some people to understand about how we're using it as a tool, and it is only a tool. It's very difficult to understand how the tool is used by the teacher, and it is no different to any other tool that a teacher uses. They will choose to when to use it and when not to use it, and and how is it best for that child.
I was going to say, the days, you're absolutely right, the days demystify. So coming in to see it live, to see it in action, it just demystifies it for people, and they see a way through. And it might be that they don't have access to devices, one-to-one devices straight away, but they then go back and they review and audit what they do have, and they see where they can use it and be really specific.
I mean, we didn't have one-to-one devices, not until recently, because it's taken us that long to change our infrastructure to allow us to get devices, and you afford them by choice. So therefore, our photocopying bills are significantly, less than 10% of what it used to be, because we don't print anymore. We have less people that we use for administrative tasks and all sorts of different interventions and things like that, because we can maximize our teaching, and we can maximize what we're doing. So it creates cost savings, which we will use. Our teachers are happier because of that. Their workload has reduced. There are people that I know who were going to leave the profession, and we brought in EdTech and actually stayed in the profession because they felt their work was manageable, as going forward. So and we've had people who have left us and for career reasons gone to somebody else, hated it, and come back because they can't, they feel like their workload is increased and they're not teaching the way they want to. The schools don't understand PedTech. And so for us, it's been a great recruitment and retention tool. And we for all this process, we provided an extra 2 hours of non-contact time a week, just to focus on PedTech in the early days, to allow staff to learn, because you've really got to think about the time you give staff to learn, and that made a massive difference.
I'm sure that has immensely. I'm going to ask if we just pause for a moment, because I've got to do the various intros. Let's come back to the conversation in a second, if that's okay with you. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate you being involved in the conversation. If you do have comments, please do drop them in to our feed. If you've got things that you want to ask, or things that you're responding to, we'd appreciate it if you do. Now, just please, we're here on LinkedIn, YouTube, Substack, and Spotify. If you can like, share, and subscribe, it helps us to build the network. It helps us to get people involved in the conversation. So if you haven't done so already, please just like, share, and subscribe in terms of whatever platform you're following on. For Smart Curriculum, there's some fairly big events coming up. You'll know that we've been talking about for some time the book that I put together, The Efficient School, and Paul has been talking really about some of the features of what that means, being deliberate about our spending, making sure it's going on pedagogy, making sure it's being spent wisely. But if you want some of the principles that are being discussed nationally and internationally increasingly, please do get involved in that book. And then my following book, The Perfect Timetable, about how we lead and structure curriculum design, not just writing timetables in secondary schools, but right across the piece. That's due out on the 12th of March, and it will be following very soon, and we'll be featuring it in some of the shows coming forward. So if you are out there and interested in some of the how do we make this happen kind of conversations, talk to people like Paul and Joe in terms of how they've made it happen on the ground. But some of the principles behind it are covered in the material that we've been discussing for some time. So let's come back to the conversation. Both of you, in terms of, you've talked about, Paul, on the ground, what you've just said, that, people are coming back to you as a trust because they like being with you. I'm really interested to hear that you've invested time. So that 2 hours that you put in initially, is that still in place, or has that changed, or is that something that varies over time?
Yeah, Joe will touch a bit more about how it's used in a second, but yes, it's still in place. We've managed to do that, but we used our pedagogical tools to create the time. So we made a load of asynchronous lessons for art and computing at the time, so we could use our cover supervisors to facilitate those lessons, to create some of the time in the early days, and then we rechanged our structures to be able to maintain that, going forward. Joe, do you want to explain a bit more?
Yeah, so Paul said we started off originally with 2 hours to really make that impact for teachers. And again, it was initially around the PedTech, understanding how we're going to get this into the classroom. going to observe others, working with small groups of children, so that, you know, with different platforms, so they understood how it's going to work. And then now we've just moved that to an hour a week for our teachers. As we know, the climate's changed slightly, so we've had to do that, because this is not an easy thing to put into place. You know, as a head teacher, this takes some organisation and looking at the timetable and restructuring people's days. But it is really working and really valued in the trust. So some schools do it an hour a week, some do it 2 hours every fortnight, because you get a little bit of a better run at the whatever it is you want to be learning about in that time. But again, that's it's extremely valued by our teachers and making an impact for them too.
And it's really focused on about how you're teaching, and because PedTech is one element of how you teach, that is naturally happening with inside it, because we've gone through that intensive training period of how to do that. So now it's just part of how we teach. It's part of our teacher learning framework. It's part of what we're doing. So that just progressed over time.
Paul, can I just, obviously a lot of what you've done in terms of the journey has been very primary phase led. What's your experience so you're rolling out in the special schools in September, and you've got some work going on in the secondary. Do you see particular difference? And I know my experience, I would say, is predominantly secondary, although we work right through the phases as smart curriculum. My own teaching experience was in secondary, and I found that the granularity of schools you get, it's very much more open to the maverick that will do something particular, and everything I hear from you, the infrastructure, the pedagogical understanding, the kind of value driven basis of everything, it is pervasive. It's there for everyone. Do you see any difference in its application in terms of where you're moving?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk a bit about special first, then I'll come on to secondary. So one of the things I was nervous about special was I've got two SEMH schools, so I was expecting children to throw devices around, and when they're deregulated, and we found they don't. If we get them to open the box and it's their laptop, it's their device, they really look after it, because they don't get much, and they really look after it. The fact is, it was an easier transition into special. We've had to do a lot of infrastructure and network, which is probably more than I expected, to get people up to the level where we can roll out like one-to-one devices. So they've got devices. They are doing PedTech. We've got one of the schools which is a Microsoft Showcase school already. They're in a much advanced journey, but from September we'll have the full one-to-one devices, where they've been doing PedTech like us for probably about 3 or 4 years since they've been with us. The secondary school joined with us on the 1st of September this year. We have been working with them. The secondary teachers come in and just see the pedagogy, because it's pedagogy when they come into, it doesn't matter it's in a primary classroom, it's just pedagogy. So they've really picked up about how they can do that. We've done a couple of trial projects, which maybe you can expand upon with Stephen Jones and such like in a minute. But one of the things I was really surprised was I expected the secondary school network to be all singing, all dancing, and it really wasn't. I was horrified at how poor their network infrastructure is to keep up with the primary school. So we're having to spend a lot of time and money putting the infrastructure back in, because it's been neglected over the years, because they just don't do PedTech in any way, shape or form. In terms of winning hearts and minds, we've got lots of the secondary school teachers to come and watch the practice, because a lot of them have been quite cynical about it. But once they've seen it and understood it, and the CPD program that we're putting in, so we've probably been, I would say, the implementation is exactly the same. It's just more efficient because we've learned. So from September next year, it's September 26. All the laptops are changing for all teachers and all staff across the school. Big change to a device that allows them to do PedTech teaching. Then they've got a year's worth of CPD implementation program, and then we're bringing in the devices into year 7, and then we're going to roll them out as we go through. So it's a really staged, managed approach, because it's got to be right. I've learned things about like just moving rooms. How does a child move from A from this classroom over the other side of the school, up 3 flights of stairs and down the other side, carrying a laptop to go into that section. How are we going to charge it? How are we going to do all these things? So we've really taken the time to like explore some of those things by having some trial, test and learn projects, which Jill will talk about.
But, and again, we've also linked with other secondary schools that are on this journey. Again, getting ideas and sharing with them. But yeah, I think to really kickstart this too, we've been really lucky to work with Adobe Express. We've done a pilot with them. We've without one of our special schools, Birchwood, and with our secondary school UCC, and we've put those one-to-one devices into 2 classes, English and Maths UCC, and at Birchwood we started with, I think it was Science and Maths there, and those teachers worked with particular year groups. I think it was year 8 and year 11 in one of them, and year 10 and 11 in another of the schools. So they're very particular about which children they were working with the pilot, which again helped. But again, Adobe Express helped us as a way in to understand how this app, this platform would help with the teaching and learning within that particular subject area. And then from there, that's had a knock-on effect to then have that interest in, well, how do we get to Teams? How do we get to OneNote? How do I do this? And the curiosity from those teachers has been amazing, and also very cascades out to everybody. Everybody then starts to be interested and wants to know a little bit more about how that's working, to the point where now at UCC, the maths teacher there, Stephen Jones, he's leading on OneNote training for a number of staff that, again, are going to be a pilot group in that school that will then do the training around it, so that when the one-to-one devices come in, they'll be ready to run with it. They'll feel that they have the knowledge to be able to then disseminate to the children. Yeah. Well, what we find is the pupils pick this up very quickly. A lot of the time, it's the teachers, as always, as we want to be, that that facilitator, that person who has the knowledge at the front of the classroom. But what I think with this journey as well is what we've got to be mindful of as educators is that it's okay not to know it all. Sometimes it's absolutely fine, because it also shows that we can collaborate and work alongside our pupils and our students, and sometimes they will know more. And how great for them, the confidence that gives them, and they can be that educator and that facilitator sometimes, not often, but occasionally, just to come up and support others, but also to share their knowledge. So it's a real shift in education that's coming at the minute, but a really exciting one. And I think that's what we have to harness. The fact that share the really good. It's that tech for good. That's what we're kind of promoting here. Yeah.
It's really heartening to hear that. I mean, we've had Marcelo Starikoff on, the guy that wrote The Joy of Not Knowing, and I hear the resonance in that. And that's the joy is in the teacher as much as it is in the pupil, and the pupil can sometimes take the lead in learning because they've engaged with something, and it's that impact of lifelong learning, that fact that we're discovering all the way. Paul, you were going to respond there.
Yeah, it just made me think, because I run various groups to just keep my hand in and just teach the kids, because you can get very separated very quickly in this job. Children, I ran a Minecraft club, and the children are the teachers, not me. They teach me how to do something. I set up an activity and where we're going and what we want to learn from it, but the technical side of Minecraft, they're teaching them themselves in groups and showing each other what to do. And I come away with loads of notes to learn about how I could do things a lot easier and a lot simpler. Yeah. So I think you're right in that joy of learning, and I love those sessions. They're great fun, have loads of stuff. The kids get those out of it as well, or I hope they do. And it's really rewarding, and it reminds me of when I first went into teaching. And I think that's what PedTech's doing for some people, is that it reminds you, it brings the joy back into teaching. I feel really sad for the profession, because a lot of the stuffing's been knocked out of it. And I say to some young teachers, what do you enjoy about the job? And they sadly struggle to say. So bringing some of these things in just empowers them a bit more, I think.
Yeah.
And Chris, I think as well, just to add to that, what I think when it's done well, when it, it's quality first teaching and it's been planned in well, the technology, it really brings to life as well critical thinking and the collaboration and that communication, creativity. All those 6 C's come out, and they're there with traditional lessons. They are, but sometimes they're hidden. You don't see it. But when you put the technology in, purposefully, it really comes to life, and the focus in those lessons is unbelievable, and the communication that you hear from the children, the conversation is so powerful, and it's exciting. There's a real buzz in the classroom. And I've been in education for a number of years, and I've never seen lessons like that until you put the technology in. And again, as I say, planned in well, but it brings another element to the lessons.
Absolutely. And I hear you've said it several times, but that sense of asynchronicity, that teacher-led classrooms have to be synchronous because it's all focused on an individual. But what you're saying is you're releasing staff to really deal with personalized learning in a way, and that's the difference that you're talking about, as far as I can hear. So the well-being and workload things kind of step to one side. But it's really good to hear that it's happening. Paul, you were going to say something there.
No, I was just thinking about that asynchronous learning, because what you realize is you can use some of your teaching by recording asynchronous, like, little instructions, and use those time and time again, and it saves you in the classroom. So therefore you can get to the children who need you the most, because you can use your asynchronous learning for those children who feel independent, because sometimes children get a real kick from the fact that I don't need a teacher to carry on my learning, and that asynchronous little video with inside of OneNote, for example, that gets you back on track, explains you how to do that equation, can then just get you back on track, and you feel good about yourself because you've got that self-led learning.
But from the teacher's viewpoint there, you're duplicating yourself. You can be in more, 2 places at once, and that's really refreshing, because again, you can personalize the learning. We've not really touched on the inclusive side of this either, and how you can really reach your SEND pupils, but also every pupil. You're allowing them to personalize and learn at their own pace as well when you're doing that within your lessons. Whatever platform you're using for that, it allows learners to really take that independent step.
It's even helped with transition, weirdly. The weird thing that really struck me was that teachers were sharing their little introduction videos to do things. And then when the children moved to the next class next year, they felt they already knew the teacher because they'd seen that teacher's little videos in those little sections. I mean, when Joe recorded all the computing courses that we did, Joe would go around to schools, and the kids would come up to her and talk to her because they knew Joe, because she did the lessons. So actually, in terms of relationship building and all those sort of things, it's quite funny how those side impacts you have in terms of inclusion. There's been huge wins for our inclusion.
And what you're talking about is not, so much of what we hear about sort of the negatives of this kind of resource is that it's dehumanizing, but actually what you're describing is something that's very human. The fact that you can touch somebody that simply with a video or a kind of an audio. I know over my teaching career, 25 years ago, I was recording things because I just simply lost my voice, but it was so easy to just to record something and be there. And I know what you're saying is true, that young people respond to it. They hear it, they go back to it, they refresh it, they go over and over it. So it's so valuable.
And when I first started teaching, I used to use talking tins a lot, which was those like you record yourself for 30 seconds on a little button. But obviously, it's just that, but better now, really.
Yes,
it's just funny how it's gone forward.
But what I hear from both of you, and then Joe, your role has been key in this. Is the systemization of it. It's not you're not doing it piecemeal. You've actually made it a purpose, and you've embedded it in everything you do. Your role is, Joe, your role is fundamentally about embedding that across the trust. Is that not right?
Yeah, I would say it's a role that other trusts should consider, because what I think this role does, it's not me, it's the role. It links the IT team with the pedagogy as well. Our IT team are integral to what we do. We can't do any of this without them. And I always say they're like the invisible heroes for us, because they keep this running. But I suppose this role also links with them and then to the classroom, you know, so that we can triangulate what's going on and keep the discussion going, the communication. We've got a great CTO as well, Mike Sanderson, who I also work alongside. So there's a real team effort there, you know, around this that we. But I have to say.
But isn't that it, Joe? That's what, in a sense, that's what I mean about you've made it the system of your trust. It is embedded in everything. So roles and people and organisational frameworks are key to it. And you know, if we're speaking to others that are looking to get into this, you do need to take it seriously and make it a system thing. It's not just going to be one person who makes it, you know, the kind of maverick that I've talked about.
Yeah, and you're right, absolutely woven through everything. And that's the thing with all of this. The technology is absolutely everywhere within our system, and schools, even if they think they're not doing it, they are, because they'll be doing it in the back office. You know, your administrators will be doing it, your office staff, you know, your kitchen systems now are you know, full of technology. When children are going up and ordering their food, there'll often be an iPad or something there when they're ordering. When people come into the school, they sign in on a digital system. When you walk through the door, there's often a TV, you know, a TV screen displaying what the school is all about and the culture of the school. So it's absolutely there. But obviously, I think what we worry about sometimes is the fact that there's a gap. A gap can be, we're almost not starting a gap, but there's a gap forming between where we're going as a trust and other schools that are not quite there yet for many different reasons. It could be infrastructure, budget, you know, it comes from many different things, and we don't want that to form, and that's why this is important that we do share this journey. Hence why we have the open days and we ask people to come in and see what it is, to demystify it.
And your willingness to come and talk about it here, because other people will engage with it because we are talking about it now. Like we amazingly we've had quite a long conversation and it kind of goes so quickly, but there's a couple of things I want to ask you, and the one I ask every guest, and I'll ask you individually, if there was one thing that you could change right now, what would it be? But I'd also like you to think about, what do you think's coming next? But Joe, let you go first. So if you could change one thing, what would it be?
I think it's CPD in the system. I think it's the training element for teachers across country. I suppose I'm talking about here, you know, not just in our trust. I think we need a national push in terms of the PedTech and AI. I include AI when I say PedTech here. You know, there's so many teachers out there at the minute that are using AI, but have they had the training for AI? Do they really know what AI is? And I don't mean that in a patronizing way at all. What I mean is, have they had, you know, has their school or their MAT provided training? There's so much great training out there. The DFE have put together great modules with the Chiltern Trust, and they're out there. And I do think we probably need to make these inset day training pieces for schools, so we really know that our educators have had the proper AI training before they actually use the AI tools. You know, they have that really good understanding about all that misinformation and hallucinations and everything else that we hear about. We hear all the different terminology, but do we really understand it as educators? Because have we been given the time and the training, not just about AI, but obviously different platforms as well? But I do think there's a huge national training piece to be done here, with it also maybe skit programs as well as ECTs coming in, but also our very experienced teachers, you know, really need that training too.
Yeah. As life is moving quickly, and it is. Paul, your perception.
It's really hard to choose just one, but I think it would be really going back to the national curriculum. I was really sad with the national curriculum change. I felt it was really unambitious. And I would really go back to looking at the 21st century learning skills, really looking at Michael Fullan's work about deep learning and the skills that we need. I've just been lucky enough to go to Singapore and really see how they are focusing on 21st century learning skills, not just passing knowledge tests, and we've really got to, there's a place for both, and we've really got to understand that, and the government's got to get behind that and help schools support them forward, and then really talk to the like Ofsted and various other people about what that actually means. So I mean, and then the other thing really is get Ofsted to understand PedTech. There's far too many inspectors who don't understand it, and where does it fit in the framework? Because actually that will be the magic moment that will change the nation, is if you put that as an integrated part of an Ofsted framework, everybody would change instantly overnight.
Yeah.
And that is sad. That's a really sad indictment of our system, but it's the harsh reality of that.
It's so many things to say on that, Paul. I just, I'm writing a piece at the moment on exactly that, the 21st century skills. This whole idea. I mean, obviously, there's the sort of post-16 view that's where application of knowledge comes, but it's more how we use knowledge, and not rather just how we retain it. And we're not measuring retainment, are we? So question 2. What do you see coming next? What would you want to be coming next? Joe, you're so far ahead in so many schools. I mean, I'll give an example. I went into one school that was academizing, and the person that was going through the project process asked for the attendance book. And they said, they wanted the attendance book. And what they meant was the red ledger book that had the list of the children's names and a tick on it. We're in the 21st century. I had a printout of a sheet that came off the IT system, and they didn't want that. They wanted the book with the ticks in it. And it's that today that's still happening. So for you, what's next? What's coming?
I have a huge wish list.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I would love. I think this is a big wish. For me, I would really love, I suppose, educational settings to also change as well for our learners, in the sense that they become these spaces that are, it is about PedTech, but it's also about the STEM as well. And it's bringing in that element that really brings this to life for children, for pupils. So in all schools, I would love them to all have a multimedia hub, so that they have access to green screens, to robotics, to radio stations, to podcasting equipment, to drones, all of those things. I really think, again, bring lessons to life. But again, there's also a training piece around that for educators to be using those within their lessons with the pupils. But again, really changes up what we can offer, and also makes them see where they can go with careers, really opens up their world. And brings those kind of options and thoughts and ideas. I suppose it's that innovation and that aspiration that I want to, that I would love to come into schools on that kind of level, which is, I know, is a big wish, and there's a lot of money involved in what I've just said there. But at the same time, I think children deserve this. We at the moment have schools that are, leaking roofs, and we don't provide the right setting for our pupils who are going to be, the next generation of our workers out there. And and I would also love to make more connections, education to make more connections with business as well, and to really run side by side. I think you experienced that in Singapore as well, didn't you? You saw that there, and I do think there's so much opportunity there to make those connections and really make education something really special. I do think we're in a really exciting time for change, but there's also so much that we need to do.
I think you're right, and I know certainly. I mean, the work that we've been doing, certainly the conversations having recently at Singapore, the whole APAC region. Japan is looking, Hong Kong is investing massively. There's some interesting things going on in Australia, New Zealand. There are things that people are talking about that, Paul, from what you just said about the 21st century skills, they are not just knowledge focused. They're really resourcing learning in a completely different way. And I think, the English system is great, and it's served the world, but it needs to listen to. It needs to hear what's going on. Paul, go on. I'd say, what do you see next? I
mean, I think I would really be excited to see little AI coaches, so that every learner in the future will have their own little personal AI bot that can help them throughout their learning journey. So they've got a 24 not to replace the teacher, but to be an added coach, an added thing to really help them think, focus, learn how to learn, which is just as important, and understand the will to learn and how you can apply it going forward. So I think that'll be the next 5 to 10 years.
Look, it's been a brilliant conversation. Really appreciate both of you giving up time during half term and to talk about what you're doing. Just so thankful for what you've said. That obviously you're on LinkedIn, so if people want to reach out to you, they can do. If you want to reach out through Smart Curriculum, please do come and connect with the network. Either ring the office or send an email or find me on LinkedIn. There's fairly high profile. You can see my stuff there. So if you want to get to Paul and Joe to hear and see what's going on, or even just see some of these discovery days for yourself, there genuinely is an open invitation. But thank you very much both for being here. I'm going to do the closing credits, but just thank you for the conversation. Really appreciated it. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
So this Friday Focus has been a good one, talking about EdTech and PedTech and that journey. So please do join us for the next episode. As I've said, there are some interesting conversations coming forward: character education, creativity, enterprise. We've got Marcelo Starakov coming back. We're going to be looking at PAGs and special needs education again through their system with Felicia Gibson. So there's lots of people coming through over the next few weeks and months. Please do come and join us for the conversation. Thanks for being here today. We'll see you again. Please join the conversation.